How's it going, everybody? This is the 13th round. I am Scott Chris, the managing editor of BadLeftHook.com. I am joined by Connor Rebush and Kyle McLaughlin. We're here to discuss tonight's very good, lived up to the hype fight between Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. Before we really jump into the nuts and bolts of the fight, we ended this one in a split draw, three-way split draw. One card for Gennady Golovkin, 115 to 113. One card even at 114, 114. One card absurdly for Canelo Alvarez at 118 to 110. Kyle, we'll start with you. How did you score the fight, and what did you think of the decision?
I actually have my scorecard here. I had 7-5 Golovkin, 115, 113. I thought the draw card and the Golovkin card were more than fair, contrary to what some people were saying on Twitter and online, that they thought Golovkin won by a landslide. I think Canelo fought brilliantly, and the only problem, obviously, was that Adelaide Bird scorecard, which I believe I actually correctly called earlier on in the week. I said I had Canelo with 2 115, 113, so I was wrong in that respect. But yeah, I saw that kind of fight, a 7-5 or a 6-6 kind of fight, and then one absurd scorecard, and that's what we got.
Connor, how'd you have it?
Always the absurd scorecard. It wouldn't be boxing without it. And nobody's going to defend that 118, 110, I think. But
well, we'll see. Nevada might try.
Yeah, nobody should defend that 118, 110. Nevada definitely will, but nobody should. I guess it's disappointing in a way to me because the fight was awesome. Like in terms of the action it delivered, the skills on display from both men, the back and forth nature, it was a great fight. It was a really memorable contest. And I think a draw, as Kyle said, is a totally defensible scorecard. I think anything in the range of like 7-5, you could possibly argue for a little wider on either side, is really fine by me. I just think that, unfortunately, even though materially the result is a draw, and I think that's fine, we have this one absolutely bullshit scorecard that makes everybody upset. I had it 114, 113 Canelo. I think that's what my final card came out to. It's possible that should be 115, 113, but my math is terrible. So I think it was 7 rounds to 5 Canelo, but there were a lot of razor close rounds in there.
Do you score even rounds, you guys?
I don't.
I try not to.
Rarely do. It's got to be a legitimately special round for me to score it even. I never score a round even because nobody did shit. I try to pick out somebody who landed at least one decent punch.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I had it 116, 112 for Golovkin, 8 rounds to 4. I was not bothered. I thought the Golovkin card was fair, obviously, and I wasn't bothered by Don Trella scoring at 114 to 114. I thought 6-6 was fair enough. I could even listen to an argument for 7-5 for Canelo. I wouldn't agree with it, but I could listen to it from what I would assume would be a rational human being.
You're not going to have a choice. I won't argue that I'm rational, but you won't have a choice. You're going to have to listen to that argument. I'm going to give it to you.
Well, but I just, goddamn, 118 to 110. Yeah. Here's the thing. The HBO broadcast, every time, they've started doing this in the last year and a half, 2 years. They kick it to Harold Letterman. They say, Harold, what about these judges? And every time he goes, oh, they're all great.
Yes, they're always all great.
And it's like, Jesus Christ, this doesn't help anything when one of them comes back with a god-awful card. And it's not like this is Adelaide Bird's first god-awful scorecard either.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, the first time I remember really being aware of Adelaide Bird scoring, I think, was the Calzaghe-Hopkins fight, where she turned in 114, 113 Hopkins, which I thought was an absolutely phenomenal card. Obviously, I would have seen her before that, but I thought that was a great card. She's good. And now there are more popular fighters involved. She just completely falls apart at the seams.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think she's a very, to be nice, an inconsistent judge. That would be the nicest way I could describe her. But Letterman is, she's a great judge. She'll do a bang up job.
Right, Jim. She's great.
I guess it's technically possible you could score this fight 118, 110 Canelo, because you could argue that there were 10 rounds that were very close. But
Could you?
There were 10 rounds that were at least very competitive all the way through, or tons of rounds look like this. Golovkin, lots of volume with the jab. Canelo lands like the 2 or 3 flashiest, most telling counters of the round. How do you score it?
See, I don't think there were 10 rounds that were
okay,
debatable.
but I'm just saying that the problem with boxing, the problem with boxing is that this happens all the time. Like we always have at least one card in these big important fights where the most improbable way of looking at the fight is apparently how that judge viewed the fight.
Yeah, we've been saying since Trinidad De La Roya that these scorecards are going to kill boxing. Do you know what I mean? It's
right, yeah. Because look at, like, again, I don't think a lot of people would be disappointed with the draw here, but I don't think most people would be heartbroken at a draw. The 118, 110, however, is going to stick in a lot of people's crawls.
There are a lot of people that are devastated online. Look, everyone knows I love Golovkin, yeah? Actually, the reason I'm wearing these shirts is because I joked that I would have cried after the fight. But actually, like, I love Golovkin. There was some thought beforehand that maybe I was overthinking it because I was worried he was going to lose. I watched the fight completely impartial. My scorecards are fairly consistent. I'll gladly defend all of them. To give an example, on the night of the Jacobs-Golovkin fight, I scored it 114, 113 Golovkin. I scored it again this morning. I had exactly the same card. And I think there are definitely 7 rounds in there you can find for Canelo. I'm saying that as a Golovkin fan, but there are a lot of Golovkin fans online. I've even seen one guy who I respect highly. I'm not going to mention his name. He's a terrific writer who said Canelo was poor in the fight and that he's a sham of a fighter, essentially.
Yeah, I can't agree with that at all.
I mean, for me, like, he fought the optimum way to try and win that fight. Anyone who thought Canelo was going to come forward and fight, I don't know how many times you and I have been over this, Scott and Connor, how many times are people going to have to be told that Canelo is a back foot, exclusive counterpuncher for them not to be surprised anymore when he doesn't come forward far enough to the body like Julio Cesar Chavez? You know what I mean? It beggars belief, essentially, and it's blowing my mind that even now Canelo can put on a masterful performance of boxing, whether you thought he deserved to win or not. And it seems like nowadays fans are just not accustomed to close competitive fights. It's either this guy's the pound for pound number one and he dominated the other guy and the other guy's trash. They cannot get their heads around a close fight.
Yeah, human beings have this weird thing where something can't be a little bit of both of two seemingly opposite things. Like, it can't be a fight in which both guys had their moments. And I think too, like, the perspective, just how you view a fight and what you tend to prefer in scoring, which there's a lot of room for subjectivity, is going to come into it. But I think we could probably all agree, and I'd like to think that the vast majority of boxing fans could agree, that even if you think Golovkin did enough to win, 6, 7, 8, up to 9 rounds, arguably, then you'd have to be saying that was a strategic failure on Canelo's part, that he didn't win enough rounds. No one could say that tactically he wasn't absolutely brilliant. Like,
I think it's the best he's ever been. I think it's the best he's ever been.
His skills were in perfect form. His defense was beautiful. You could definitely argue that he didn't do enough to win the rounds, but nobody else has, and I don't think anybody else right now could have put on that kind of performance against Gennady Golovkin, to let him throw for such extended periods of time while backed up into a corner, and for him to land so rarely with a really big, clean shot.
I mean, Canelo was sidestepping the right hand the same way every time.
Yes.
Spinning off to his left, pivoting out, off the ropes to his left, and Golovkin still couldn't get that timing down. Even when Canelo was tired and Golovkin seemed fresher, Canelo's defense was still on point. He was hitting Golovkin with full-blooded shots. I literally could not hurt him on him, I don't think. Which I think both guys just needs to come out of this fight with immense credit. Yeah. We were talking about scorecards. Sorry, man. I went right off on a tangent. We went off on a tangent.
Well, so we're talking about the fight, right?
Yeah, we got the scorecard part out. We can just bullshit about the fight. That's kind of the point, really.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just checking my phone. I actually had it Canelo 118, 110, which I'm very surprised about. Siri's telling me off for that. That's strange.
See, I can see the draw. I can see a thin Canelo win, maybe. Again, I can listen to that argument.
So we'll talk about that more. I would like I'd like to make a case for Canelo winning, but go on.
I mean, I'm just, we come out of these fights, it seems like almost every time with something that ultimately in the immediate fallout overshadows the fight. And then it just turns into this constant bitch fest among every member of the boxing media and the fan base. And it all but ruins the fight as a short-term memory. Eventually I'll just be like, yeah, that was a great fight. But right now I'm just like, God damn it, we're doing this again.
Yeah, but don't you think, sorry about it, just quickly, we've been doing the same since Hagler Leonard. They're still talking about that decision now.
Right.
I mean, it's just, go ahead.
I think it might just be the internet. Like, I really think the internet just
the fucking internet doesn't help anything.
The internet is an evil thing. It is going to be the death of us all. But I think it just heightens, because you can go back and look at, like records made up mostly of newspaper decisions from boxers at the turn of the century, and you'll have like 3 newspapers had this guy winning, 4 newspapers had the other guy winning. It's going to happen forever, because it's always going to be a lot of subjectivity in how you score a fight. But like, social media really does make it pretty unbearable, because again, I don't think 114, 113 Canelo is an indefensible scorecard. I think most boxing fans would agree that is within the realm of defensibility. And I can't tell you how many people have already come up to me on Twitter with the brilliant and classic gem, "What fight were you watching?" Because anybody who has a different scorecard than yours is a fucking moron, and they weren't watching the same fight.
Did you get any "you don't know shit about boxing"? Because that fucking thank God for Roger Mayweather in that line.
Yeah, thank God, right? Roger's really done us all a great service by adding that one to the lexicon.
It's one of those fights. There are points where the scoring criteria is clean punching, but in a round, say we've said this loads of times, if someone lands 3 clean, crisp punches, but apart from that, they do little, and the other guy lands 15 scuffing punches that hit the body, hit the shoulder, not the arms, but the shoulder, around the top of the head, for me, that's a close round. It's pro boxing. We look at I think rather than the actual criteria, we look at the ebb and flow of rounds. Guy comes out, lands a great jab. It's up to the other guy to return that favor, and basically it's a kind of, what have you done for me lately? I think a pro scoring round, and there are rounds where Canelo would come out sharp, Golovkin would be on top of him for most of the round, then Canelo would land 1 or 2 sharp, clean shots. Now, how the fuck do you score a round like that? Because personally, if you bring up the actual criteria, Canelo deserves to win. Yet everyone online thinks that Golovkin was completely robbed.
Well, I think ring generalship.
Ring generalship,
whatever the fuck you want that to be.
Is it the guy cutting off the ring? Is it the guy cutting off the ring? That's ring generalship. Is the guy who's getting out of the way? It's too close. You have to
stylistically, both guys get the fight they want. No one gets ring generalship. It's too wishy-washy. I hate that ring generalship is a part of the scoring criteria, because it should be its own reward. If you are getting the fight you want and controlling the fight, then you should be winning the rounds, right? You should be scoring the better punches.
Exactly.
But I would say that there were a lot of rounds like that, what you described, Kyle. That was a lot of the difficulty in scoring this fight. A lot of rounds. I will say, I think if these were different fighters, people would be less hostile to the idea of a draw or a close card for Canelo. I don't think anyone should ever be in favor of a 118, 110 Canelo. And please don't think I'm on that side of the fence, because that is way too far off to pasture. But Floyd Mayweather has won rounds like the ones in this fight doing what Canelo did. People assume that when Floyd Mayweather's on the ropes, shots that might have hit his body, might have hit his arms, they'll assume it didn't land. Something that glances off his shoulder and clips him on the top of the head, that doesn't land. Canelo, meanwhile, doesn't do exactly the same stuff as Floyd, but he might be the best head roller in the sport today. I'm not sure if anybody rolls off punches in that classic Mexican style better than Canelo. So he really didn't take a lot of clean punches from Golovkin in like the first half of this fight in particular. And I think a lot of people would be able to see why you could give those rounds to Canelo if he wasn't Canelo, if he was like a slick American fighter rather than like what he is, which is Guadalajara's tribute to James Toney. He's just a different version of that same style. But but doesn't get the credit that like a slick American fighter probably would. And likewise, if he wasn't fighting Gennady Golovkin, people probably wouldn't be so upset that he's taking rounds off Golovkin in which Golovkin is touching him with more punches, even if he's not landing as well. So.
Just quickly, man. Just me quickly run through. I've got Canelo winning the first two. I've got Golovkin winning the third. That's when he really started warm up. I've got Canelo winning the fourth. I've got little notes here. I've got round 5, Golovkin. What a round! But that was the round where they both sort of opened up and both sort of. As a matter of fact, there was points to that where the most exciting thing was that they were both slipping each other's punches, which doesn't help. Canelo round 6, Golovkin 7, 8, and 9, and I've got 8 and 9. I've got close. So those are rounds where Golovkin's landing. He's being the aggressor. He's backing Canelo up. Canelo looks a bit ropey, and then Canelo will put forward some good shots. I mean, there was a one where Canelo landed the absolute best punch of the fight and overran right. It went through Golovkin. It did nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And he landed, I think, a few good jabs as well, and maybe an uppercut. But Golovkin is obviously on top of him for the whole round, and Canelo looks really, really tired. So in that instance, like, we're going back to ring generalship. Golovkin's essentially bossing the fight, but he's getting hit with massive shots. He isn't hurt. But again, it's clean punching. I've got Golovkin winning the 11th, and I've got Golovkin winning the 12th. But in the 12th, Canelo came out strong as well early, didn't he? Or was it the 11th? So, look, if we just swap those two close rounds.
Both those last 2 rounds, so.
Yeah, I think I gave the last 2 to Canelo, but they were both very close.
Okay, in which case, give those last 2 to Canelo and take away the 2 that I said were close. I had him winning 5 rounds. We've just given him 4 more rounds. That's 1-1-7, 1-1-1. Now, I'm not going to say, sometimes I find with a robbery, I'll go back and watch not this, but with a robbery, I'll go back and I'll watch the fight and I'll try my darndest to give every round that could have feasibly gone to the fighter who was the robber, essentially.
Yeah.
And then I'll see how close I had it. So, for example, I tried to give every possible round in the second Pacquiao-Marquez fight to Pacquiao. And I still had Marquez winning. But this time by a single point rather than a couple of points, In this fight, if I did go back and try and give Canelo every feasible round, Conor, I might well be on the same wavelength as you are, mate. I might well have had him winning the fight. So I'm not that bothered.
The real problem is not only the scorecard is so wide, but again, like that's what I was trying to say before. There are ways in which you can give a lot of these rounds to Canelo. The thing is, every single fight like this, one of the judges has one of those scorecards that, like just by numbers, should be pretty unlikely that you give every close round to one fighter unless you're biased or corrupt or incompetent.
I think what we're getting at is the scorecard was abysmal, but the result is probably fair.
I agree. That's how
I wasn't upset about the result. I was I'd say I was unsatisfied, but I'm generally going to be unsatisfied with a draw, even if it's a perfectly legitimate outcome. Obviously we're going to head for a rematch here. I would assume it will happen Cinco de Mayo weekend next year, which will be the next traditionally huge fight weekend. Wouldn't be surprised to see them take interim fights in December or January, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see them just wait and do it again in May. I mean, there's going to be a lot of money in it. Hopefully for them, this fight sold well. I expect that it did. Attendance was great. I think there was over 22,000 people in the building at the T-Mobile Arena. But for me, the fight and how I got to 8 rounds for Golovkin is, again, it's subjectivity. I know this about myself. I tend to score toward the aggressor. I just do. I mean, it's just what I prefer. It's just a natural way that I wind up scoring fights. But in a lot of those rounds that I was giving Golovkin, especially in the middle of the fight where I thought he sort of firmly took control of the fight, after 9 rounds, I had him up, I think 7-2. And then I thought Canelo kind of fought his way back into it. And I thought Canelo did a lot of things well, even in rounds that I thought that he lost. These were closer rounds that I gave Golovkin because I said, okay, well, I think Canelo did some stuff well here. This is a close round. What am I picking on? And my natural, the way that I go is I look probably to aggression before just about anything else, especially I have to say effective aggression. It's not just if you're just winging shots all over the place and you're slop and you're not doing anything well. But I thought in pretty much every round, both of them had their moments. Both of them fought well. I thought throughout the fight, they both fought extremely well. I thought this was, Yeah, look, I don't think this is going to go down as the fight of the century or anything hyperbolic like that, but it was a very good fight. Tactically a very, very good fight. It wasn't an all-out war. It wasn't the most immediately memorable action of all time, but it was a true big fight atmosphere that delivered on sort of the hype behind it. And I come out of it more or less satisfied with it. I came out of fucking Mayweather McGregor more or less satisfied, but that's a totally different thing. That's another thing. And I don't mean to bring this up and be like petty about it, but if you go back now, if you're someone who maybe watched this fight and doesn't watch a lot of boxing, and you watched that fight and you had fun with it and you ordered this fight, God damn, I hope you kind of see what the difference is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because we all know that obviously McGregor Mayweather was a higher level fight and a better fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This
fight, it was too good. McGregor Mayweather, fight of the year.
Yeah, well, Canelo did a great job of rolling off that right hand, as you noted, Kyle. But does that compare to the angles that McGregor brought into the fight?
Angles.
Canelo was very, very disruptive. I found Canelo very disruptive, and he's going to knock him out, man. He's going to knock him out.
Why do you guys think Canelo got tired, like halfway through the fight?
Because it's hard to keep up that level of movement and whatever when you're carrying around that amount of weight. I mean, what did HBO give us the fight night weight? We didn't get it over here.
No, Canelo a lot of the time doesn't do it. I don't think they did it, so
he's probably
I didn't notice
180, 181.
Yeah,
and
he looked off
maybe
he generally puts on a lot of weight, so I think he kind of
Golovkin probably 174. Golovkin,
I think also though. I think he would have benefited from a little more of what Triple G did to him, like adding volume without really adding more energy expenditure. Because I know he's a counterpuncher. Right. Yeah. Just touch him. Non-committal shots. Just touch him, get the distance, make him think, let him know that you're able to hit him with a shot if you so choose. Like, that's the kind of stuff that made Mike McCallum a much more dynamic counterpuncher than Canelo can be at the moment, because Mike would like fill the spaces between his big counters with sort of stay busy volume to set you up and keep you thinking. And that was, I think, Canelo throws basically only power. He's a great technical puncher. He may have some of the prettiest fundamental offense in boxing right now, but everything is like a tense power shot. And it's weird. Golovkin is the power puncher in this fight, but it was Canelo who was like feeling the effects of throwing everything with heat, while Golovkin actually looked better than he has in some recent fights as far as conditioning is concerned, because he just kept Canelo busy with, relatively meaningless but effective in their way volume punches.
I think Canelo, where he likes, we'll talk about his stamina here, where he needs to take that little breather, I think he uses the space, like you're talking about, Connor, not the throw, to take that breather. And I also think because he knows that his stamina isn't that great, that he only throws when he knows he's going to land. He's very economic with his offense, but there's nothing wrong with that. But like you say, like it makes for a close sort of fight and a hard-won score.
He wouldn't have to be so picky if every shot didn't tax him equally. If some of the shots were 50% power, he could afford to throw more of those. He could afford to be less picky. But I'm also just not sure that's his style. Like, he really likes that perfect counter. That's something that he searches for in every fight. And I don't know if he's ever going to be much more of a volume fighter than he is.
Also, I think the problem with him before was that he was cutting the 154, and it was a struggle for him as he filled out his frame. You think moving up to 160 would be better? Like 165, he looked better. Obviously, Chavez Jr. didn't push much of a pace. The problem being, of course, he hasn't just stopped. I thought he was. I'll cut less weight to get the 160, and he's packed on more muscle, so he's making like a similar cut before.
Cut.
He looks better, but it's counterintuitive. I think it's
you and I aren't huge fans on the focus of being a big dude in the ring that modern boxing seems to have.
And it doesn't really help Canelo. Canelo doesn't need to hold his own on the inside with strength. He needs to be nimble and quick, and those, like you said earlier about James Toney, it's what I've said before. They both got the same concrete feet moving backwards. So Golovkin was happy to fight at range. and work his way in with the jab, as he did against Lemieux. Like I said, I actually thought Canelo would win based on the fact that he had more counters to the jab than Lemieux. And that's why I think Golovkin used the Lemieux tactics. But it was a really close fight because Canelo was obviously significantly more diverse, composed, better defense. He's just better than Lemieux in everything other than raw power. So, yeah, I think it was a really close tactical fight. I don't think Golovkin hurt Canelo too often. Maybe sort of the 9th and 10th, there was a couple of right hands that went through him. But I think really Canelo is so composed and experienced at this stage that he's very good, like you say, riding with the shots and also just showing that he's not hurt. Golovkin, he likes to... The whole thing where people say, you know, if you nod or shake your head, it means the opposite. I'm not so sure that's actually true for Golovkin. I think he actually likes saying, "No, you didn't hurt me," because he's never dissuaded. When Tommy Owens used to do it, you can see his legs were going. Golovkin is.
It does mean he's been hit. Like, it's an indication that he's been hit clean, but it's not.
It's a respect thing. I think it is naturally a respect thing. Like, he's like, yeah. Okay, you hit me, but
it's not a show. He likes that. He likes the big drama show. So
and
he's not pretending.
That overhand right I spoke about earlier that went straight through Golovkin, and the uppercut, I think over the 7th, 8th or 9th, or around that area, completely coincides with Golovkin then just walking forward with reckless abandon and not actually hiding behind the jab, but using a lot of really brilliant, I thought, defensive work, catching shots on the gloves. And because he wasn't so worried that he didn't, when he came into range, he wasn't so bothered about blocking stuff. But I said before, the big problem with Jacob is that he actually got out of range rather than block and keep moving forward. In this fight, I think he tasted Canelo's power and was like, yeah, I can sort of afford to try and block these because if they do hit me, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, he looked like a tank in this fight. Do you guys have any, watching how the fight played out, does it change your prediction or affect it in any way for a rematch?
Yeah, a little bit. I think Canelo can do better. And this is one of the things I keep talking about with Canelo lately, especially in the build up to this fight. Canelo is 27.
Yeah.
Like, he's just entering what should be his prime.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a good chance he makes the weight a little bit better. He learns from, if he made any mistakes in camp, he learns from that. Obviously he's going to have learned from, the what happened in the fight. I mean, that's a given. Golovkin is 35. I'm not freaking out. I'm not Teddy Atlas. I'm not, God, he's slowed down. He's not any good anymore. But, eventually youth prevails. I don't know if that will be against Canelo. I don't know if it'll maybe be against somebody else later on down the line. But as far as just the style matchup, I think they're just a very good style matchup. I mean, I know Kyle watched it earlier, but Billy Joe Saunders defended a middleweight title earlier on Saturday against William Monroe Jr. That was not a good style matchup. That was a horrendously bad style matchup. And, as a quick note to, goddamn, when people go, oh, you got to take the title from the champion, I always think about champions like Billy Joe Saunders. And I'm like, how much credit are we really giving these belts? That somebody needs to do something extra to take a paper title away. If you watch that fight and then watch this one, the difference between the skill level, and I think Billy Joe Saunders is a pretty good fighter, but it's massive. And with Canelo, I think he can do better in the second fight. I don't really think Golovkin can. And I scored it for Golovkin, so maybe maybe it's just the same fight all over again, and I end up scoring it for Golovkin again, and maybe we get another controversial outcome. Maybe we get whatever it is. But I came out of this thinking more again of Canelo Alvarez, especially going forward, not necessarily just in the next fight or in a rematch with Gennady Golovkin, but for where his career is going to go in the next 5-6 years. I mean, I think he can be a really great fighter.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I feel the same way. Obviously, I had it for Canelo, so that means I think maybe he'll pick up another round or two a little more clearly next time. Mm-hmm. The question for me going into the fight, having picked Canelo, was, I knew that I had the feeling, at least, that he could match Golovkin technique for technique or even outdo him technically, which I think he did, at least in a lot of ways with his defense. The question was, how is he going to react when he gets tagged? and pretty well. Like, he didn't get tagged all that much. Most of the shots that hit him were jabs, and the like 2 or 3 really big right hands that caught him, I thought he carried him off pretty well. So I suspect Canelo himself probably had some of the anxieties I had just having picked him, thinking like, what's it going to feel like? You know, everybody talks about this guy's punching power. What's it going to feel like the first time he hits me clean?
Mm-hmm.
And now he knows. And for like a cerebral kind of fighter who might sometimes overthink things, I think that's probably a boon for Canelo, especially for like a thinking man's counterpuncher, just like Ward versus Kovalev. Even though both of those fights ended with some kind of insane controversy because this is modern boxing, I don't think anyone would disagree that Ward is the kind of fighter you would expect to do better the second time around against the same opponent, and that he did do better the second time around. I suspect Canelo is probably the same way, that having seen somebody for 12 rounds allows him to be a little more comfortable with him the second time.
Yeah, I think maybe Golovkin might try and... I think the idea might be that Golovkin might try and start a bit faster in the rematch. I don't think that necessarily benefit him. And I don't think that will necessarily benefit him. I was going to make the point, Golovkin knows that you can take Canelo shots. The same is true. What you say about the controversy in all the big fights nowadays is that even though there's been a great year for boxing, I think if the best fought the best month in, month out every single year, you wouldn't remember the controversial ones quite as much. Although saying that, people still remember the long count from Tony Dempsey, so maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Canelo will a rematch, personally. Obviously, again, I'll be rooting for Golovkin. I want him to win. I thought Golovkin won this fight. I could conceivably see that Canelo won the fight. Most definitely. I want Golovkin to win again. I'm just more of a fan of his, and I like to see, great champions, especially in the middleweight division. We had a great one of them for a while. Here's a question for you guys. Who actually comes out of this fight with more credit? Do you think this legitimizes Golovkin's claim for a title? Or do you think where it's so close that... sorry, let me rephrase that. Legitimizes Golovkin's claim as having been the best middleweight for all of this holding up the lineal title bullshit? Or do you think it kind of legitimizes Canelo as a legitimate pound-for-pound force, and they kind of balance each other out? Do you think it's still up in the air? It's a stalemate, essentially?
Kind of both. I don't think anyone with any sense would have been arguing for the last 3 years that Golovkin wasn't the best middleweight in the world.
Oh, and, that makes me sound stupid.
Who have you been arguing for?
But I think Golovkin's the best.
All this time that Miguel Cotto is the best.
No, I think Golovkin is the best, but I don't think he's the champion. Just as
Oh no, I like my lineal titles. I'm okay. I don't mind Canelo claiming that he has the lineal belt.
And this vindicates me to an extent, because even though everyone's saying Golovkin won, the fact that this fight was so close, could have gone either way, then maybe Canelo was the best middleweight in the world when he won the defenses were abysmal after he beat Miguel Cotto, and Cotto won it off a bum knee of Martinez anyway. But
Golovkin's been the one proving against middleweights that he can beat anyone put in front of him. Canelo hasn't. It's just accomplishments wise, you'd have to, I think, say Golovkin's been the man for the last few years, and I think it does him a credit here. He looked good. I thought he looked better here, like in better shape, a little more lively than he has in last few fights. I kind of thought he might come in looking a little shop worn. I didn't like the way he looked either against Brook or Jacobs necessarily, but even if he did of course win both those fights, he looked a little slower. But
also, one point, just so I remember, Alvarez wearing winning gloves. I don't remember him ever wearing winning gloves before. Winning gloves are Morales' gloves of choice, obviously, for bad hands. So, did he have a hand injury or something? Because usually does he usually wear Everlast or Reyes?
Yeah, usually, as far as I remember, he wears Everlast MX gloves, usually.
Yeah.
The winning gloves, and it was a thing on Twitter especially, there were at least mumblings that he might have suffered a hand injury in training camp.
I was also wondering if perhaps he might have come in thinking, I want a little more padding when I throw my guard up. I don't want Golovkin's hand.
Yeah, that's what first happened for me. I thought, he wants slightly more safe gloves, shall we say.
You don't want to have just horsehair and your own hands between your skull and Golovkin's fists. So
again, I see no problem with Grants, but you would think Golovkin would always wear Reyes, and he doesn't. I mean, Grants they're kind of the correct blend of sort of athletic sort of boxer gloves and puncher's gloves. But it's always struck me as quite weird that Golovkin doesn't wear Reyes or just go bare knuckle, which I think would be fair as well. You know what I mean?
It's always struck me as strange that Golovkin doesn't come in with his hands wrapped in leather and a railroad spike clenched in each fist. Why doesn't he do that?
Yeah, I see no problem with that.
A gross oversight on his part.
He should at least carry a railroad spike like Bruiser Brody. He could at least do that.
Yeah, he could at least be that thoughtful, but no. He just comes in wearing Grant gloves like a fucking asshole.
Yeah. And then you got this other dude, some ginger Mexican dude wearing winning gloves like a complete, let's be honest, if we're being frank, he might have got in the ring and just done 12 rounds with Golovkin, but for wearing winning gloves alone, the guy is a pussy.
Now this is a boxing podcast.
Ah, here we go now. We're kicking it into overdrive.
Oh, hashtag boxing fans.
Who's going to play Stephen A. Smith? Because I want to be Teddy Atlas.
I don't think I can do a Stephen A. Smith.
I think a lot of people would be upset if I did do my Stephen A. Smith.
I think it might be pushing the limits of good taste.
Call Connor a fireman and let's go absolutely crazy. And then
I'll be Teddy Atlas. I mean,
here's a question. You guys obviously watch HBO feed, right? Over here, Box Nation.
I watched Ring TV actually.
Oh, okay. Well, Box Nation over here said that going into like the 11th or 10th round, that's the first round they've given Canelo since the second round. Which I was like, hold on a minute, because everyone says I hate the whole thing. Watch the fight without sound. No, be smart enough to just not let the commentary influence you. I'm not that fucking stupid or suggestible. I use my eyes to watch the fight and my ears to listen to the fight. I don't listen to the commentary. It's just a bit of, it's like, you have a birthday cake, the letters that are on it or the candles, they're just to top it off. That's not what you taste when you put it in your mouth. And, terrible analogy, but you get the fucking idea, yeah? But
I use my eyes to watch the fight, and with the commentary, I'm generally just arguing with it to myself.
Yeah, I use my eyes to enjoy the fight and my ears to hate the commentary.
Yeah.
I mean, often you see a shot land or a shot miss, and they go, nice shot, and you'll go, no, it's not, and just carry on with watching the fight. Yeah, it's not, oh, actually, I saw that punch miss from my angle, but, that was a good punch. I'm going to give the round to that guy based on that punch that I saw miss, but the commentator told me landed. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But is it right that did you watch HBO, Scott? Apparently HBO had Canelo winning the fight by a landslide.
No, they didn't.
Oh, they didn't. Oh, sorry.
No.
I think they had him winning like the early portion of the fight by a landslide.
Yeah, they had him. I think it was the first. I don't remember exactly, but I know they gave him at least the first 2 rounds. Or maybe it was 1-1. I think it was 2-2 after 4, because I think myself and Harold Letterman had about the same scorecard throughout the fight, but he had Golovkin as I did pulling away in the middle rounds. So I think it was even early, but the commentary was heavily pro Canelo early in the fight.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
They were very, very, very into their narrative of Canelo. Then they got very, very, very into the narrative of Triple G. And this is, there was one round that Golovkin, I thought did a great job and won the round. I think it might have been the 5th, or maybe it was the 4th or the 6th. I don't know. It was in there. It wasn't the 5th because the 5th was pretty close with that exchange and whatnot. But I don't remember the exact round, but Roy Jones essentially argued that Canelo let Golovkin win the round out of, I don't know, the fucking goodness of his heart or whatever it was. Essentially, that everything Golovkin did well in that round was because Canelo allowed it to happen.
Well, Golovkin said, I have big present for fans. Canelo had a big present for him. He thought if he's giving something to the fans, I'm going to give him this round.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
It was, maybe it was his gift to Golovkin for Golovkin's love of Mexico and its culture and its food.
He's like,
this is a big weekend for my country, and I want you to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, you called me a good boy, and I'm saying thank you for that by giving you a round. It wasn't condescending in the slightest. No. And have a 10-9. Do you find though, like George Foreman always favors the power puncher? Roy Jones tends to favor the guy who's trying to be a bit more elusive, and obviously Hopkins favors whoever's sort of got more tenuous claims and ties with Golden Boy. So that's just sort of how it goes, I thought Hopkins actually gave Golovkin a lot of credit in the the Jacobs fight more than they did over here on the Sky commentary, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was just interesting, I think, to see the dynamic of over here. They were like, oh, well, you know, I'll be very surprised if Canelo wants any part of Golovkin again after this fight. And I was like, he was fine. I don't know whether there's a lot of guys over here that are completely influenced by commentary, and that's why they're like, that's the worst robbery I've ever seen. I mean, I'm not going to say for a second that anyone's wrong in thinking that Golovkin won by enough points that it could be seen as a robbery. Me personally, it was one of those fights where it's like, what do you like? I take it on a case-by-case basis, not I like boxing or I like aggression. I go, what worked better in that round? And Canelo clearly won 5 rounds for me. I could definitely see the case for him only winning 4. I could see the case for him winning 7 or 8. It's just one of those fights. Yeah. People need to get their heads out of their ass about it being a robbery.
I'd have had like 6 heart attacks by now. Watching as many fights as I do, if every close fight, if I got upset as apparently all the casual fight fans in the world do whenever a fight is close and the guy they like didn't win, I would die. I think it's just not worth it.
I think there's like, because we don't get the best fighters fighting the best fighters all the time, when we get a fight like this and it's really tactical and cagey and kind of, you know, both guys have their moments and there's kind of an argument for either one. Even if you don't agree with one of the arguments, you could be able to rationally hear that argument.
Yeah.
I think that just escapes a lot of people now. Like the idea that it could be close.
I mean, how could Canelo be a sham of a fighter if he's just done 12 rounds of Golovkin? He's hitting with shots. If you were a sham of a fighter, you would not be landing shots on Golovkin. You'd go out in 2 or 3 rounds like a lot of serious middleweight contenders have done. So how can Canelo be... I've heard earlier he's basically a hype job who's heavily marketed, and this is from a guy who I really respect. And usually he's not a hot take kind of guy. He's a really intelligent guy and really good writer. And he said basically Canelo should be fighting punching bags because that's all he's good for. And I was like, the guy just tamed Golovkin for stretches of that fight.
Yeah.
It was a good fight. We can leave on that note, right? It was a good
fight. I was gonna say I think we kind of said it all, and that's the. Goddamn, I just hope we can, in the long run, remember, hey, this was a really good fight.
I had a great time watching it, man. Like, until that scorecard was announced and then I knew what was coming, I had a great time watching this fight. And that's all I can really ask for.
Like, I love, I've said this so many times, the best thing about boxing to me is, and about MMA too, when I have the chance to watch it still, is the big fight atmosphere. That is my favorite thing about it. I can still get goosebumps over a fight I'm excited about. And I had it for this one, and I thought in the end it lived up to that. And I thought it was, again, like I wouldn't say it was the fight of the year, but it was a very good fight at the highest level of the sport, and you just don't get that enough.
Agreed. 100%. It was still better than Ward Kovalev. Those 2 fights, still better than those 2. I
thought Ward Kovalev 1 in particular was actually a pretty.
Yeah, I liked that.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, but this was.
I thought this was better. Yeah,
this was undoubtedly better.
Agreed. Yeah.
For me, I mean, still the fight of this year is. For me, again, it's a lot of big fight atmosphere and a lot of big drama.
Can I guess Joshua Klitschko? Yes, yeah. I was right. Yes.
I mean, for me, that's going to be tough to top. That's just.
Yeah, it's undoubtedly a fight of the year. I actually, as soon as the fight was over, and everyone knows I'm a little bit stuffy towards modern guys, just a little bit.
And maybe a little bit towards Anthony Johnson. Something Anthony Joshua. Sorry,
I love Rumble. I love Rumble. I will say that. I love Rumble Johnson.
Thinking of MMA real quick. You've been known to be a little critical of Anthony Joshua.
A little bit.
All right, but did I not hold my hands up and say when you need to have certain fights to learn something about a fighter?
Yeah.
Often you see guys, they get brought up against guys they're supposed to beat, and then they get smashed against guys that they're not supposed to beat. But sometimes they prove themselves in the fights they're not supposed to win. Mm-hmm. And it's like the Lara fight for Canelo,
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't supposed to get anywhere near Lara, and he made it close. So, he proved himself. Joshua, he was either going to demolish Klitschko early because he's old, so it wouldn't have been that impressive, or he was going to get hit and he was going to be gone. And both those things happened. And then another thing was Joshua, is he going to have the stamina to go for 12 rounds? We had no proof. I only go on the evidence. He proved he can go the distance, like long into the fight. He proved more in that fight than he did knocking out Martin and what have you. So for me, yeah, like I hold my hands up. I look at the evidence, and if the evidence is there, I will not dismiss it. I still think Anthony Joshua is not like, you know, some people. You've seen the people online, guys. You've seen what it's like.
No, I understand some of your derivative.
He's a mega star. He's a good sort of boxer puncher for his size. He hits hard. He's got heart. He's proven it. He can hold a shot. He's proven it. He's not, you know, the second coming, so to speak. There's people now that think, you know, Joshua is better than, this guy's going to go down as better than Lennox Lewis and Ali. No, he's probably not.
See, I get two loud opinions on Anthony Joshua generally, and one is that he will go down as being better than Lennox Lewis and Ali and everyone else. The other is that he is still a poor man's Frank Bruno.
Yeah. See, he's a little bit more fluid than Frank. Who, if anyone listened to our podcast recently, I ranked Frank as the 5th greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. So, no praise from me. But no, you guys are right. I was a bit unfair on him, but be honest, now I'm fair. Is that not? Yeah. The fact we're mentioning him in this class shows, you know, there are still stars in boxing that won't go to a controversial decision. There's no controversy in that fight. We've had big fights this year where there's no controversy. They're still trying to make controversy out of the fucking McGregor fight, saying they should have allowed him to be knocked unconscious and possibly bludgeoned to death before they stopped the fight. Boxing fans will moan about anything.
I thought they should have let him kick.
I think he should have run in, hit a double leg, choked Mayweather out immediately, then screamed MMA for the win and run away. I think that's what he should have done. But
I wanted a breakdown of society with the fight. That was, for me, that was the ideal.
We did. We had a breakdown. We had a breakdown in the social and private life of a certain analyst who thought he was going to knock him out, guys. He's going to knock him out. Connor, how did that prediction go for you in the end, Connor?
It would have been a good time for just like the world of capitalism to come crumbling down. Like that fight would have been a really good apocalyptic moment.
Yeah, Kim Jong-un should have watched that fight and said, "Nah, man, McGregor was robbed. Send the nukes."
Right, McGregor comes out and spin kicks Mayweather in the first round and knocks him out, and then just the nation collapses. I think that would be perfect. That would have been the perfect ending.
Yeah, speaking of perfect ending, let's go ahead and wrap it up on nukes and the collapse of capitalism. This was
it's late.
This was the 13th round. I am Scott Chris for badlefthook.com. Guys, you want to plug anything?
If I may.
Go ahead.
Just started the Superfly Boxing podcast. Only done a few episodes. It's relatively fun and it's quite in-depth, but also just quite fun, I think. And not quite as the glossy production isn't quite there, but you can find us on iTunes and online and what have you. And the Superfly Boxing podcast. Hopefully you guys will give it a listen and give it a rating and help us become a bit more visible.
Yeah.
And I do Heavy Hands with my co-host Patrick Wyman. We do technical analysis. It's a podcast. We do technical analysis of largely MMA and some boxing. And Kyle and I just did a final return of our podcast, The Historical Perspective, which is now going to be released through Heavy Hands' RSS feed. So we just did one that's available for everyone that was, you know, Kyle's top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. So go check that out as well. Heavy Hands podcast.
Which, of course, had Frank Bruno at number 5.
Bruno.
Who else could be there? I mean,
he's no worse than 7.
Yeah.
You're being unfair. You're being unfair on Frank.
They always are.
All right. This was the 13th round. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We will, I'm sure, some combination of myself and these two fellers and maybe somebody else will be back with whatever the next big fight is. I'm tired and I can't think of what it is right now. But until then, thank you for joining us. So long.